Welcome to the Plant Trainers Podcast, where we're helping people improve their quality of life through nutrition and fitness. And now, your hosts, nutrition and wellness coaches, international speakers, Adam and Shoshana Chaim.
Hey, I'm Adam Chaim.
And I'm Shoshana Chaim, and we are
Propelled by Plants. Today we bring to you episode 267, Getting Back to School with a Holistic Approach.
In today's episode of the Plant Trainers Podcast, it's just Adam and I, and we talk about how taking a holistic approach to getting back to school can really improve the family's quality of life. Even though we focus on the school year, the 4 pillars that we talk about in terms of change can be applied to anyone's life, whether they're parents or not.
In our own coaching practice, and just like many doctors, we take a holistic approach to health and disease reversal following certain pillars. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could teach our children and ourselves to practice these life skills in order to help avoid unnecessary disease and stress?
We urge you to share this with every parent, teacher, and administrator that you know. And if you take action after listening to this episode, be sure to document it in social media and tag us at Plant Trainers across all social media platforms. Want to be a lunchtime rock star? We thought so. Many of you are parents who need to make healthy plant-based lunches for your kids that they will actually eat. And it doesn't matter if you're a homeschool or traditional school family, because lunch is lunch. So we've created a quick and easy to use product that will get you communicating with your kids and planning lunches like a pro for under $5. Most people tell us that's a no-brainer. So head to planttrainers.com/shop and pick up our ebook, School Lunches, A Guide to Making It Easy and Healthy, and join all the other lunchtime rockstar parents out there. Forgot the link? No problem. Be a rock star and click the link in the show notes.
And now for a moment of gratitude.
Today I'm grateful because I saw an old friend who I haven't seen in a long time, who had had an accident, and it was just so wonderful to be with her, to hug her, to eat with her, to share stories with her, and just honestly today to be alive.
I'm grateful for the new school year. It's a new beginning, getting ready to start some new routines with new students, new people, new colleagues, new friends, and I think it's going to be a great one. It's that time of the year again.
It is that time of the year, and it can be very overwhelming for people thinking about their kids going back to school, coming off of summer vacation, you taking on new projects at work. What are going to be your goals for this year in terms of what you're doing for your exercise and what you're going to eat and then your overall health and wealth and all of those things.
You just went into a whole whack of things.
Right,
and
but this is a new beginning.
But we were going to focus on getting back to school, and so many young kids, so many kids all over the world have already started school. We're already into the swing of things.
Right. So here in Ontario, where we live, up in Canada, we don't go back to school until after Labor Day. And for those of you who are not Canadian, you probably don't know what Labor Day is. But that first weekend in September is the Labor Day weekend. And then on the first Tuesday, we go back to school, which is today. But I know that a lot of states, especially the ones down south where it's a little bit hotter, they get off school earlier in the year and they go back to school mid-August. So some of you are into the swing of things. But the reason why I mention everything that I mentioned earlier is because this is a new beginning. This is a time for a new beginning. So kids go back to school, which means we start thinking about all new beginnings in various places of our world, of various places of our life as well. So it can get a little bit overwhelming. And like we mentioned in the introduction, for those of you who listen to the introduction, and thank you very much if you do, but for those of you who do listen to the introduction, you heard us say that doctors and ourselves in our own coaching practices are starting to take a more holistic approach. So when you go to a doctor, a lot of doctors, it's not just about you have a pain here, take this. When you have a good doctor, they're starting to look at, well, what is your movement like? What is your nutrition like? What is your stress levels like? We're seeing this pop up more and more. So what we thought we would do today to put a little bit of a twist on things is we would put that holistic approach and talk about some of the pillars that we incorporate into our own coaching, whether that be nutrition, lifestyle, or fitness.
And while we're going to be talking about getting back to school and using these tips and tricks and holistic points to help with our kids, they really do apply to all of us. in everyday life.
Yes, so you can use this in any situation. And I think where we need to start is at the very beginning. And if you're not at the beginning, don't worry, you haven't lost out. You can start this at any time with children of any age, but you've really got to think about pre-teaching life skills, especially at the beginning of the school year. What is it that you want your children to be able to have in their repertoire so that they can deal with anything that comes up? Instead of dealing with your diabetes later on in life, what can you learn in advance to keep yourself from getting type 2 diabetes? Well, the same thing goes with all of these social and emotional skills for children, organizational skills, how to make new friends. Don't let them go through 3 months and not make a friend. Teach them how to say hello to somebody. Teach them how to invite somebody over to their house. What is it that you think that your child is lacking in, and pre-teach them those skills before they get themselves.
So what kind of skills are you talking? You're talking about like saying hello and being polite and being kind and saying thank you and please and that kind of basic?
Absolutely. Anywhere between, even under the age of 12, 10 probably, but any of those ages, especially if they're going into new schools, especially if they have different classes where they're probably not going to be with a lot of their friends from the years before, especially 4 and 5-year-olds going to school for the first time, you want to teach them how to go up to not a stranger per se, but a classmate, somebody who's becoming familiar to them, and say, "Hi, my name is Shoshana. Hi, do you know your phone number? Can we have a play date? Do you want to play with me? Come build next to me."
What if somebody's like a shy kid? Like that's just part of their attitude, their personality. They're just shy.
So that's why we want to practice. That's why we want to role play at home. Just because they're shy, it doesn't mean that they need to never speak to anybody or never have friends. It doesn't mean that they're not going to feel isolated. Just like we would teach a kid who's not if somebody wanted to play baseball, but they weren't very coordinated, we would teach them the skills, right? Kids, even shy kids, want to have friends.
So when we're talking about basic life skills, we're really talking about social skills and being able to kind of come out of your shell a little bit and talk to people, be polite, be kind.
Well, what we're going to talk about throughout the rest of this episode, the pillars that we've decided to talk about today, whether it be food, whether it be movement, whether it be socializing, there's skills that can be taught in all of these different areas. So even if it seems super basic to you because you're an adult and you've been doing it for 25, 35, 45, 65 years, it doesn't mean that it's going to be a second sense or a first sense for children. We need to teach a lot of these things in advance. So I guess what I'm saying is think about all the things that you're going to hear about today. Where do you want your child to excel? Where did you see a gap last year? Where can they do even better? And start to teach them some of these skills, even if they seem super, super, super basic. And it doesn't have to be all up to you as a parent to do it for the child. Have the child begin to advocate for themselves.
And I feel like we've talked about a lot of these things before on the podcast. I know we did some podcast episodes about back to school before. We did episode 35, 122, 213. And we'll link to all those in the show notes so you can go back and listen to those if you want to. But we're going to be giving some more information, some detailed stuff here about these different important aspects of everybody's life. Like you mentioned, the food, the movement. We're going to talk a bit about mindfulness and how they apply to our kids going back to school, but how we could also implement these things into everybody's lives.
And you can have family meetings about these things. So take notes or take mental notes if you're running or driving or something like that. Take some mental notes on what it is that you want to start incorporating, because now's a time of year where it's really easy to make some changes. Even if the school year did start for you, have a family meeting, say, Mom and Dad want you to start doing some of this, or we're going to teach you how to do this, or we don't cook alone anymore. We cook all together. That's some of the changes that we're going to be making as we head into the school year. We're still on vacation. Well, we've still been on vacation, but now that the school year is starting, I don't want to be in the kitchen alone anymore. Whether the kids have programs or a ton of homework, that's another thing. But if everybody else is just kind of playing outside or coloring or maybe watching some TV or riding their bikes, yes, I want them to do all those other things, but I don't want to be the only one in the kitchen. I want the kitchen to move faster, but I want to give them the skills. So that's something that we're going to be changing as we go.
Right. And so at the beginning of anything new, any beginning that you have, or anytime you want to start something new, it's always good to set up some type of routine. And this is the type of routine that we're going to be adjusting in our own home. And that is getting everybody a little bit more involved in the food making process so that everybody could have a little more input, but also appreciate what they're eating a little bit more throughout their day.
Right. And once we're talking about eating, let's get into our first pillar. Our first pillar is nutrition or food. And what I'd like all of you to do, especially if you don't feed your kids lunch and they get lunch at the institution of your choice during the day.
Institution, like they're in prison or something. When they go to school.
When they go to school or daycare or wherever it is that they are, I want you to concentrate more on breakfast and dinner. Because when we put things in a kid's lunchbox, we don't know what they're actually eating. We don't know what they're trading off. We don't know what's going in the garbage or falling on the floor, and if they've eaten it or haven't eaten it, or what kind of foods we want to feed them, and whether or not they're going to hold up in a lunchbox, whether it be hot or cold or avocado that turns black and disgusting. So concentrate on breakfast and dinner and make sure that you are hitting as many colors as possible, hitting as many nutrients as possible. And those are the meals that we can keep note of. Those are the meals that we could have more control of as parents, where kids can have choices more because they are home for the most part. So really, when everybody's really, really concerned about what to make for lunch, and if they're having a really darn good breakfast and darn good dinner, the lunch doesn't weigh as much on your conscious and on your stress levels because you know that they're getting what they should be getting in a day or in a week.
When your kids are at home, you have a lot more control over the food that they're going to be consuming. When they're not home, you don't know what they're doing. That's why we're talking about breakfast and dinner, because most of you are going to be home with your kids during those times, and being able to feed them or participate in the meal making process with them, you know exactly what they're getting into their system.
So I know time is an issue for a lot of people, and making lunches and what should they make. So making a list of what should be included in the lunchbox every day is a really good idea. So you might have a little piece of paper that says 2 fruits, 2 veggies, 1 main, and a snack, right? But what I'd like you to do is make a whole bunch of lists that go with what can the fruits be, what can the veggies be. That might make it easier for you.
Who's going to make that list?
Well, first of all, we have a school lunch guide where it makes it easy and healthy. So it's called School Lunches, a guide to making it easy and healthy. And if you just go through that in the 10 minutes it takes you to go through that with each child, it's kind of done for you. You know that they're willing to eat strawberries at home, but not at school, or grapes are great. Avocados a no-go at school. They'll choose the types of foods that they want to eat at school, and then you have a big list of it, and that feeds into your shopping list. And all that, I mean, I think it's under $5 on our website at planttrainers.com/shop. And for the $5 that you could reuse that for each child and reuse it every year, it's definitely worth it because it gives you a list. But what I wanted to say is, don't confuse a snack with junk. Kids shouldn't learn that the word snack means a junk food. It doesn't have to be a cookie or popcorn or pretzels or a chocolate bar or anything like that. A snack is simply a small little meal that you eat in between meals to bring it to the next one. Something that needs to fuel you. So don't necessarily...
It can be a cookie or a treat or something. It
can be, but the word snack shouldn't mean junk. Right. Word snack should mean a small little bit that we're going to eat now. And sometimes it could be an ice cream or a chocolate. But the kids get under the impression that they need a snack in their lunchbox every day. They don't necessarily have to be under the impression that they get a junk food.
So it's terminology.
Every day. It is terminology. It's
linguistics.
Yes, absolutely.
Semantics.
And it makes a difference. You know, some people say, oh, it's just semantics. But you know what? It does make a difference. And our subconscious hears it loud and clear. And what you want to do is you want to be consistent with that. So once you've established in your meeting, or if your kids are small enough, once you've established that a snack does not equal junk food, be consistent. Don't only use the word snack when it's junk food, because then you're going to ruin all the work that you've done.
Isn't it funny that we started talking about breakfast and dinner and how that's the focus, and now all of a sudden we're only focused on the lunch and the food we're sending with these kids to school?
Well, I mean, that is the bigger part, but we are talking about back to school.
Right.
Right. So this is the part that happens at school. Another way to make it easy is my kids have pizza day every Friday at their school. Or is it Monday? I actually think it's Monday. I'm all confused with the camp, so I better get knowing within the next few weeks when pizza day starts up again. But what I do is I make my own pizza at home, something that I'm willing to give my children, something that's not full of cheese and not ordered in from a restaurant or what have you. So on the pizza day where all the other kids are ordering, I will send our children with pizza from home too. So that's one extra day a week where I don't have to think about what is for lunch. And I kind of create a schedule, and if I have the things in the house for it, I kind of stick to it, and that helps.
And if your kids are going to help make their own lunch, they're going to be more likely to eat it at school.
Absolutely. And that's why we love food prep. That's why we love cutting up the vegetables, the carrots, the celery, having cucumber out, all the different melons that we buy, and saying, okay, which one do you want? Let's put it in the lunchbox. Whether they're physically putting it in a lunchbox or whether they're just making the choice, it's going to mean that they are more likely to eat it as well.
And that goes for dinner and breakfast too. The more they participate in meal prep, the more they're going to want to eat those foods.
Right. So overall, for food and nutrition, what we're talking about is concentrating on breakfast and dinner because there's more options. You can control it more. Foods that are smelly or stinky or go bad, you don't have to worry about how your kids are going to react to that at school. But be organized. Make a list of things that you're going to add to the lunchbox so you could do less thinking, and create a schedule and stick to it. That's it for food and nutrition.
That's it. We're taking a short break to let you know that this episode of the Plant Trainers Podcast is brought to you by the Yummy Foods activity book for kids that we recently published and is now available on Amazon and Kindle. We know it's being used in homeschooling programs as community outreach materials, as well as a way to keep kids busy, learning, and having fun without electronics. We wanted to share a few testimonials happy customers have left, and this one's from Jessica.
I love learning about new foods. Still being a fairly new vegan family, I would love for them to learn even more. I was pleasantly surprised when we received the workbooks and every one of my children, ages 1, 3, 8, 10, 12, and 16, took interest. Wow. Well done, Shoshana and Adam. This book is interesting, fun, informative, and I feel good about the fact that my kids are not only wanting to play with it, but they are learning at the same time. Win-win.
This one's from Timothy.
The recipe activities are great. No stress. It's a way to bond with your kids in the kitchen and teach basic kitchen skills. I recommend it for homeschooling, church-based programs, and presentations to elementary school kids. The worksheets can also be used as fun activities to test basic food literacy knowledge in adult-based presentations.
To get yourself or a young one a copy, visit the link in our show notes, which is planttrainers.com/yummyfoods, or search Yummy Foods on your country's Amazon site. And now, back to the show.
All right.
Let's move on.
You said move.
Oh, let's move.
So the next pillar is movement. You know, of course, nutrition and movement is something that we concentrate on a lot with our coaching clients here on the Plant Trainers Podcast, where we're helping you improve your health through nutrition and fitness. Like, those are the things that we concentrate on the most. So when it comes to movement, it doesn't have to be exercise. It doesn't have to be working out. There are lots of kids who don't like team sports, but how do we get everybody to move more together?
Well, that's one of the biggest problems we have in society right now. And one of the major causes of obesity is that we just aren't moving. People are too sedentary. Kids are not moving as much as they used to. I know that when I was growing up, I used to walk to school every day both ways. It doesn't happen anymore.
Up a hill.
Up
in
a
a
hill,
snowstorm both
in a
ways.
snowstorm, the weather didn't matter. But that doesn't happen realistically anymore. So we need to find ways to get our kids moving. And it doesn't mean they have to be out at night playing soccer, running on the field. They don't have to play organized sports, but they do need to find ways to continue to move. And not all of our kids are getting 5 days a week, 30 to 40 minutes of physical activity through their phys ed programs at school, which is what they should be doing.
And a lot of parents will say, my kids just don't like exercise. They just don't like sports. And I respect that we shouldn't necessarily make our kids do a lot of things that they don't want to do, that we need to respect their individualities. They usually have other talents like art or something like that. But with video games being what they are these days, sometimes it's video games that's really, keeping them from liking other things. So
And when we talk about moving, we're not talking about moving our thumbs on the joystick of the PlayStation or Xbox. We really need to get these kids either outdoors, moving around, whether it's walking around the block or running with a family member, or just walking up and down stairs for a few minutes, or doing some push-ups or planks in front of the TV if they are watching TV, or taking breaks from their Xbox or PlayStation and doing some calisthenics. So there's lots of ways to get integrated movement integrated into these kids' lives, but we just need to make it important enough. And we got to set an example, of course, and we'll talk more about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, so for those kids that don't like the soccer or the karate or swim or anything like that, there's some ways around it. First of all, swim is a life skill. If you don't learn how to ride a bike, you might lose out on some social events. Or if you don't learn how to do karate, well, what's that really going to do for you, or soccer? But if you don't learn how to swim, that could be a matter of life and death. So for us in our family, swim is non-negotiable. We don't do it year round, but we do it a couple of semesters or a couple of sessions each year, and that's non-negotiable. They need the skill to be able to swim to a certain degree so that if they're ever on a boat and they're not on the boat anymore, we know that they're able to keep themselves afloat or get to safety. So as parents, it's our duty to know when to draw the line, know when to choose our battles. And I do believe that swim is something that all children should learn how to do. So if your children are not into swim, well, you know what? When you do your swim lesson, then you can come home and you can play on your PlayStation. Until that swim lesson's done, that's not just going to happen. Sometimes we need to put our foot down and we need to know when it's the right time to do that. The other thing is, it might be easier to pick your kids up from school, or they might like to be picked up from school. But if they live half a mile or less from school and they're not into other sports, they're not running around, they don't have other activities, then you know what? If you don't pick them up from school, they're going to have to walk. And if they're the right age, if we're talking about 10 and up, especially if they could walk with friends, then maybe that's also where you need to have that family meeting and draw the line and say 3 days a week, I'm not picking you up from school. You need to make your way home on your feet and not getting a lift by somebody else, because it's the way that you would want your kids to eat healthy, or the same way that you would make them take their antibiotics if they had a serious ear infection, or your alternative medicine if they had an ear infection. You wouldn't just let them not take it because it doesn't taste good. You'd put your foot down and you'd make them do it. So like Adam was talking about, obesity, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes, all of these diseases that we're seeing come up with young children can be prevented. And we want to make sure as parents that we're doing as much as we can to make sure that we are preventing it, and we can help control our children's lifestyle.
And that's our job. That's our role as parents, to actually put our foot down from time to time and get them to do some things that they may not want to do, but we know in the long run will benefit them. So getting them moving any way you can is really important. And one of the best ways to do that is probably to find something that your kids enjoy doing, because when they enjoy doing it, they're going to want to do it, of course, just like you would. And then they're going to want to continue to do it. So find an activity that they like that gets them moving and let them get into it.
And you could do it together as a family if they're not going to do it alone. But I mean, we're talking about running, walking, bike riding, yearly passes to a trampoline park, doing fitness videos together in the house, yoga videos together in the house, making it mandatory as a family activity for spending time together kind of helps to boil 2 potatoes in one pot and get 2 things done off your short or long list. And also take a look deep inside. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably into some kind of fitness yourself or want to be into some kind of fitness yourself. But there are a lot of families out there where the parents don't feel that they have time, or not making the time, or don't value their own movement. And that's sending a message to your children as well. So make sure that your kids see you in your sports outfit sometimes, that they see your bike all dirty in the garage, that you've taken a picture of yourself all sweaty after a workout, and make sure that they accidentally see it so that you can make sure that you're setting an example properly, because we know that It's very easy to make an impression on our children. And if we use swear words, you know what? They're going to use swear words too. If we treat people some way, they're going to treat people some way too. So if we do positive things, they're going to do positive things too.
Make movement part of your regular routine. You all brush your teeth. Well, I hope so.
I hope so.
You all take showers, hopefully.
Or bath.
Or baths. And you all need to move, period.
Done. How are you going to get your family moving? Take a minute to reflect on that as we begin to talk about mindfulness, our third pillar of the day.
I like how you just changed your voice to a calming, soft tone.
So, although the other two...
You're going to have to talk louder because no one's going to hear you.
All right. So, sorry if that hurt your ear. All right. The other two are pretty basic. You know, we think about nutrition and we think about movement or fitness or exercise, whatever you want to call it, all the time. But how can we bring mindfulness in at this time of year, the new school year, or just into the school year? How can we teach children to pay closer attention to themselves? And one of the great ways of doing that is to set intentions. Setting intentions is a beautiful way to think about how you want to be, who you want to be, who you need to step into to fulfill your goals, and whether that be, you know, show up to class, learn what you need to learn, do well on a test, make a new friend, whatever it is that our children are going through within the school year, teach them to set intentions, visualize what it looks like to say hello. For the shy kid, visualize what it looks like to say hello to that new child that they're just meeting for the first time. Have them visualize what it looks like for them to play together. Have them think about what it feels like to have accomplished that. And they'll have an easier time to be able to walk into that situation and do it. And they'll have intention. Their intention will be, today I'm going to say hello to one new person.
It sounds a little strange because they're kids and we want kids to be kids, and to ask them to be setting intentions, they're going to be like, what are you talking about? I just want to go play. I just want to go do this. I want to go do that. But if you could explain to them in a way that they'll understand that they're doing something with a purpose.
Virtual reality. Call it virtual reality, right? Kids are all into that. So instead of saying set intentions, let's do virtual reality. How would you verbalize that? Let's pretend we're in virtual reality and close your eyes and picture yourself saying hello. Picture yourself saying. That's a good way to connect
so
with
we're
kids.
going to visualize what we're about to do, but creating a purpose behind what they're doing is basically setting intention, and explaining to them why they're going to be doing something is going to go a long way for them, no matter what age they are. And believe it or not, it works with younger kids.
It really does. And we've learned a lot of this, or most of us have already learned this, but at this age, like within the last 5 years, because it's only really big right now. But imagine if we would have had that skill as kids, what we could have accomplished in our lives. And most of us have learned about setting intentions and visualizations because we were at a need for it in our life. But if we would have learned it earlier, maybe we wouldn't have been at that need. So let's give our kids, that's why we want to take the holistic approach. Let's give our kids that basics. Even though it wasn't basic for us, it's become basic for a lot of us now. So let's teach them earlier. The other thing is a gratitude journal. We just bought our daughter at the bookstore a calendar, a year-long calendar, and every week it asks an agenda book. And every week it asks, like, what are some good things that happened this week? What am I grateful for? What am I happy that I have? And teaching children to be grateful is just going to bring more prosperity, more abundance into their life, the same way it does for us. It just, what they want out of their life is a little bit different than ours. Like, our kids want a phone and an iPod and iPad. I'm not sure they're going to get a phone and an iPad because they're grateful, but what other joyous things can come into their life when they start to learn to be grateful?
Yeah, and getting back to school, I mean, we're grateful that they're back in class and they're at school again, and they're going to be learning some great stuff. But a lot of the time they come home and they're very frustrated that they have so much homework and they have tests that they got to prepare for.
Or upset about a fight that they had with a kid at school.
Right, and one of the most basic skills that we all do all the time that we don't really capitalize on enough is our breath and our breathing, and taking that extra moment to just take a deep breath, before you put yourself into a position. So before you start your homework, let's take a deep breath, refresh the mind, and then go into it with a positive mindset. Before you study for your tests or before you write them, take that deep breath. Before you get into that argument with someone or that fight at school, take a deep breath and make sure that that's really how you want to react to a situation. We don't focus on our breath enough. And if everybody just took an extra moment every so often during the day to take deep breaths, it will really make a difference in your day.
One of the good ways of getting that started is through family meditation. Sit down together, meditate, either do your visualization, do your deep breaths, set intentions together, clear your mind together, focus on something all together. And once you've done it together as a family and they've seen you set that example, then they can break off and use it, like Adam said, for those tests, for those fights, for those friendships, whatever it is that's going on. You could also ring a mindful bell in the house every day, right? So you can put something on your phone and 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, maybe like 20 minutes after everybody normally gets home, have that bell go off. And that just teaches you.
Just a reminder, but not my favorite thing to do, but just a reminder.
Yeah, just a reminder. I do it every day.
Yeah,
11:45.
You do.
Actually, I've turned it off the last couple of weeks, but got to get back into it now that we're back into a schedule.
Right.
Haven't really been on a schedule lately.
And that's this time of year is the time to set your schedule and start building that routine like we talked about a little earlier, which is our next thing that we're talking about is setting routines.
Fourth pillar.
And getting into the habit of doing things at regular time intervals. And the most important thing that we could do to help ourselves and our kids perform better is get proper sleep. And we don't sleep enough. We don't get good quality sleep. And this is a whole other topic that we could get into greater detail, but our kids need sleep.
Yes, our children do need sleep, and a lot of times we see 10, 11, 12-year-olds going to bed later than the adults. And it's true that teenagers do need less sleep than, they did when they were younger, but really thinking about, are they performing at their peak the next day? Are they waking up cranky? Are they waking up happy? Are they eating properly? Are they performing properly in the various areas of their life? And if the answer is no, then thinking about adjusting the sleep is really best. If the answer is no for you, thinking about when you sleep is really important too. Maybe it means going to bed at 9:45, falling asleep by 10, and to make up for that lost time, because we're all scared about time, trust me, so am I. Well, not scared so much as wanting more of it. Wake up a half an hour earlier or 45 minutes earlier or an hour earlier, because we know that sleeping between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. is really the best time for us to get that quality sleep. So if you're able to go to sleep earlier, then just wake up earlier, start your day, and be so much more ready. So that sleep component is so important, as is the exercise and getting homework done and cooking and getting help. So make all of that routine as well. Take some time today to plan out the next 6 months in terms of exercise. What's everybody's movement going to be that we talked about? What are some of the meals for the next month going to be? Who's on charge of helping in the kitchen on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays? Figure all of that out. Take a big, 3 hours to go through everything that we're talking about today, because it's going to save you so much more time in the long run.
And it doesn't have to take you 3 hours to put it all together. But if you do sit down as a family, or even if you just sit down and you put together some kind of schedule, and you might not be the kind of person that runs on a schedule, but I challenge you, we both do, to try to set up a schedule for yourself and set up who's doing what chores and who's helping with what meal, and when we're doing homework and when we're doing our movement and what time we're going to sleep. Set up your schedule, try it for a couple of weeks and see what difference that's going to make in your house, because it's going to make a difference for sure.
So if that sounds really, really rigid to you, that's okay. That's your prerogative. But I'm going to ask you, is what you're doing now working for you? If your answer is yes, by all means, continue what you're doing. If your answer is no, and you feel disorganized and you feel like you can never get it together and you never know what's for dinner, then I do challenge you to make that schedule. However, you don't have to follow it. You never have to follow the schedule, but just making it and having it out there and being able to put your eyes on it every once in a while, or if you're just too tired to think about what's for dinner, checking the schedule to see what options there are on there, it really does become helpful. So, when we talk about routines, for some people, it's like a dirty word. If everything's working for you, great. But if not everything's working for you, think about giving it a change.
I think we've covered a lot today, and we're getting back to school, and there's a lot of things that need to get done. And I think the biggest thing that people could do, the parents could do, to help their kids with their routines, with their food, with their movement, with their sleep, all those things we talked about, is setting an example and being that role model that your kids want to look up to. We all have role models. We all want to be role models. Our kids look to us as parents as role models. Whether you believe it or not, they hear everything and see everything that we do. And we need to do the very best we can to make a positive influence, to be a positive role model, so that our kids could grow up to be the kind people that we want them to be.
So in terms of actionable tips, although everything today seemed to be an actionable tip, what I want you to do right now, if you will, is really just reflect on what it is that's happening in your life right now that you wish that you could change. Is it your children's health? Is it their lack of exercise? Is it that you never know what's for dinner, that nobody's going to sleep on time? Figure out what it is that's affecting your life in a negative way. Think about some of the tips that we gave today. Have a family meeting, make some new rules or routines or guidelines around that object or that subject, and figure out how it's going to change and how you can improve your quality of life.
I prefer guidelines over rules. I don't like using rules. Kids don't tend to like the word rules.
Unless they're making rules for their parents.
Right.
Well,
but I'd go with guidelines.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of why I changed my words around. It's
so
hard
do that and let us know how that goes.
Yeah, for sure. Take a picture of any routines that you've made and tag us on social media at Plant Trainers, or you can write a post or a blog about it and also tag us, or you can email us at info@planttrainers.com. If anything is not going your way and you're not able to overcome that hump, let us know and we'll see what we can do to give you some help. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Good luck.
Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Plant Trainers Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or any other podcast listening platforms. We appreciate the feedback we receive from you. Every time we get a 5-star rating or review on iTunes from one of our fans, it ensures other people will find us too. Thanks to our patrons. To become a patron, visit www.patreon.com/planttrainers. Even supporting us with $1 really makes a difference. Connect and follow us on Instagram and Twitter @PlantTrainers. Like Plant Trainers on Facebook, join our newsletter, and check out our website at www.planttrainers.com for awesome plant-based recipes and a list of our services. Email your questions to info@planttrainers.com so we can answer them on our upcoming Facebook Lives. We hope we've inspired you today. Join us again next time and have a healthy day.